Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. Awesome. Well, today we have an exciting session, getting a little bit more specific today, where we're going to be talking about how to get specifically cited on ChatGPT and Claude. Each LLM kind of has their own set of preferences that, make it so they want, or there's requirements that help you rank on specific ones. So that would be ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and Google AI Overview all kind of have their own set of rules. And so today we'll be talking about some, standard best practices, but then also how we can kind of tailor our strategy for each in particular. I'm going to give a couple more minutes. I know people usually trickle in the first five, and so we'll give it a few minutes. But while we are waiting for that, let me just pull up the slides that we're going to run through today. And then I'm also going to add a link down below. You can run your free audit on your website with the URL below. This helps you understand kind of how you're ranking and how you're showing up on AI already. So this is what we'll be running together through live today. If anyone is brave enough, they can drop their URL below and we'll actually do the audit live together, and I can give you some tailored feedback as we go. If not, we can do an example. And that is fine too. Sherry, if you want to share yours, we can drop it in, and I can give you specific advice on how to solve it. I dropped the URL in the chat here as well as getting this up on the screen. Wish I could get that to permanently stay up on the screen, but cool. All right. Well, let's dive into things. So, oh, perfect. We got a volunteer. Thank you guys. I'm glad it was helpful. Awesome. Well, hold on. I'm going to pull this up now so we can do it live. I'm going to be using the Infer Science. I believe we've done this already. So thank you for joining again. All right, cool. All right, everyone. So we are going to be running through a few slides just so I can kind of set some foundation and make sure everyone is on the same page. So we're going to be talking about how to get your company recommended by ChatGPT to make sure that when your buyers are searching for you, they are able to actually find you. So the common buyer behavior now is, we know that about 60% of B2B buyers are starting their education journey and their buying session through an LLM. So whether that's ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity. And so I was talking with a CEO the other week, and he was telling me about how a growth stage payments company were, going back and forth, and you were looking in ChatGPT to see how they were ranking. And every time they searched, no matter what they searched, their competitors were showing up, but they weren't. And so learned from a bot that his buyers already had a short list, and he was not on it. And so when he reached out to me, he, explained this, and I was telling him about how, we really need kind of three components to get your company ranking on LLMs. And that consists of technical. So that just means how your website is structured, the way the information is laid out on the website, and being actually readable to the LLM searching you. The next is the content on your own website. So what are you publishing? The content strategy becomes very important here, because if you're not actually answering the questions that people are searching and you skew more top of funnel, which was the SEO strategy before, you also won't be showing up in these citations. And then, how specific and original are you? So LLMs are favoring proprietary original information and actually being able to produce something that new that LLMs don't already have access to. The third thing is offsite. So how are other people talking about you? What are the, mentions? What are your the industry blogs actually talking about your company? These could be best of lists. These could be, you know, anyone who's aggregating information into a single place of truth. how are they referencing you? And so we want to make sure that we're tackling all three going into building this. A little bit about me before we dive in. I run Catalyst. We are working with modern stage tech companies to help them build efficient systems to actually show up continuously in AI search. We've had the opportunity to work with a wide range of companies, ranging from very early stage seed Series A startups to larger stage, C and D like Framer, where they have content systems already built, and we're helping actually aggregate and scale what's already working for them. So today we're going to run through a few different things um, and what you'll be able to walk away with. So first, we're going to talk about why ChatGPT names one company and skips the next, what the model actually weighs, and the three things that you can control. We're going to actually run into do a live audit, so see whether ChatGPT is naming you today. Then see what the pages and proof that actually make you quotable. And this is just a way of saying, like, are you producing something original that only you can talk about? Because LLMs already have, a baseline level of knowledge. And then, talk about, why these systems work, how we've seen them play out, and the actual checklist that you can run with your website and start deploying some of these insights. So, the main things that LLMs are waiting, becoming recommended in LLMs is very different than ranking first. If you have experience or background in SEO, the game before was trying to get ranked on the first page and then showing up in the first few organic spots on Google. And if you, land on that first page, you want to track click through rate into, people actually landing on your website. So that was kind of what we were targeting. For ChatGPT and LLMs in general, the model is going to take a look at your website and third-party sites as well, and essentially build, an aggregate and assemble one answer, and then name a few vendors from inside of it. And so, it's really about fulfilling that knowledge gap that model doesn't have. And AI is actually quite lazy right now. It's just kind of regurgitating the information that it finds. And so being able to give it enough context and give it enough information so it can assemble and really confidently say, this is, the best answer for it. So the three things that ChatGPT, and this extends to other LLMs as well, weighs when it's trying to make a recommendation on a vendor is first, category clarity. So can the LLM actually understand what it is that you do and where you belong? This is very similar to, anyone who's been working in social for the last few years as well. Uh, you know, Helping the algorithm understand which niche you fall in. It's the same idea. And this can come into play in a few different ways. So, are uh, continuously talking about, a specific topic? Are you using the same tagline consistently? If in one place you say you're, one thing and the next you're a different thing, it gets confused and doesn't actually know how to categorize you. And so this is where we have to think about brand holistically and how we're actually showing up on each platform and making sure that we have consistent, cohesive language on each place that we're publishing content. We have some clients that, the first sweep we do is just see how they're referring to themselves on their company LinkedIn, how their executives are referring to them, looking at each social platform, Twitter, maybe they're on Instagram or TikTok as well. And then also on their website, their website has different positioning than their social platforms. And so that's one of the first things that we can fix to help make it so LLMs really understand, what this business does and what problem you're solving. The next component is claim that only you can make. And so specifics and proof a competitor cannot copy from your page. And not only that, but also that AI doesn't already understand, right? So AI has a baseline knowledge. And so it's looking for something unique and different. I think the biggest unlock for tech companies is using or trying to use proprietary data to enrich your content and provide something new. But this also can just be an original perspective. It's the same reason that founder-led LinkedIn and Twitter are, excelling so much right now is because and is valuing lived experiences. So content where you're talking about an experience that you had is outperforming just, copy and paste listicles or things like that, that again, an LLM could write itself. And then third party mentions, right? This is no different than a referral. So, what other sites are talking about you, how they're vouching for you, how your customers are talking about you. And the model is going to trust this about 3 times more than what's on your own page, right? Because it has the credibility of a third party, sharing their opinion versus you just talking about how great you are. So, let's see, how LMs are actually mentioning you today. We're going to go do this live category scan. Again, if you want to do this along with us, please feel free to, drop in your own website here, run the audit. It takes a couple of minutes, but I did this in the background while we were waiting. And so uh, we have this in First Science and firstscience.com. I remember doing this, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. And so we can kind of go through and run through this audit again. But we can see that this is, um, solutions, and we have a few different solutions here, a few different markets that we're targeting, and a great about us. Looks like we have a resource with some blogs, which is awesome. And so I think the biggest thing with companies that have multiple ICPs and have different solutions for each of those is making sure that we have an umbrella positioning and messaging. And then you obviously will have specific messaging under each of those solutions as well. And so we can run into the audit here. So the way that we do this is we have an overall score, so like your overall AEO score, and that's essentially made up of what we've been talking about. Is it credible? Is it readable? And is it substantive? And it seems like the credibility is looking from third party sources. Readable is the technical that we've been talking about. So is your website set up to actually be cited? And then substantive is, are you publishing consistently? Is it providing net new information? Is it original material that AI can quote? We make some assumptions based off of what your industry is, what it seems like you're selling, and what the and pairing that with search volume to make an understanding of is it actually a you know, are people actually searching for this, right? Because none of this really matters if there's low search volume. And so we actually want to know, how many people are searching this. But it looks like, in this category, we have almost 23,000 people searching this a month. And so if we target, even just a 5% share of that, we're, the opportunity to bring in, substantial new revenue is pretty strong. So we want to look at our breakdown between different search engines. It looks like we're most weighted on Gemini. I would assume that you probably have a pretty high domain ranking because Gemini and Google AI Overview are very tied to Google. A lot of those SEO best practices continue to carry over. ChatGPT is one of the harder ones to crack, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. But then it looks like you're showing up about 20% of the time and 10% of the time on Perplexity and Claude, respectively. So this is kind of where we give a full overview just to kind of give you an idea of what needs the most improvement. I can already tell the own content is probably the highest leverage, and then getting cited in some of those third party mentions as well. We also are wanting to see kind of how we compare to other businesses in our market. For a lot of new companies, it looks a little daunting showing up, lower on the list. But the thing that's easy to remember, or you should remember, is because AI search is such a new channel, there actually is a strong opportunity to start ranking and competing with some of these larger players that have been dominating the top results for a long time. So, in SEO, that was near impossible because they had years of domain authority. But if you kind of play the game strategically, we've had many clients that have started much further than position number 27, position 50, where they are ranking in the top 5 results within the first 90 days. So it's definitely possible. You can come here and expand and you can kind of see who you are. I would try to target, some more closer incumbents versus going after the big guys right away. But it definitely is possible. Because we ran 50 fresh searches to put this report together, you can actually see what the queries are that we searched. And if you click and expand it, you can see what each platform said respectively. So you can see ChatGPT's response, Claude's response, Gemini, etc. And then at a high level, you can see, again, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini up here, and where you showed up and where you didn't. This is the best thing to understand what content is performing for you right now, and then the gaps that you need to fill in. We also do just a breakdown on, again, are people actually searching these queries? And, you can help kind of figure out what your highest impact searches are. Now, kind of a summary of things to work on. ChatGPT is really challenging. They love structured FAQs and entity definitions. This is probably my best recommendation to you in First Science. I forget who sent this link. Leslie. So Leslie, I would definitely add FAQs on every page of your website that answer the questions that you're actually hearing for your customers, as well as, some of these queries, right? The things that they're actually searching. Because what AI is going to do is if they see, someone in your market asking that question and you have an answer that answers that question effectively, it's just going to repeat that into the LLMs. They also love Wikipedia. I know this is challenging for, younger companies, but ChatGPT was mostly trained off of Wikipedia. And so there's a lot of information that it still pulls from there. Sir, yeah, that's just low SEO, YouTube channel, that's fine. It also looks like there's low post volume, so there's a strong recommendation to just be posting more frequently. Again, for our clients that we recommend, if we're really trying to do this aggressively, posting 20 to 30 times a month to really, fill in that bottom of funnel content. And so that's kind of how we look at each different, LLM and kind of what's working and where we need to focus. We also have some article ideas of, what we think the 3 highest leverage articles that you could put together are in the search queries that we're targeting to win here. So best HCC coding software for health plan risk adjustment 2026. You can see things like adding the year at the end of it lets LLMs know that it is timely and relevant. We also, depending on the industry, see a huge importance on refresh. So ChatGPT, Google, and Perplexity really favor timely content. And so if it was published in the last 30 days, it is substantially higher likely for it to be cited in your results. We have a good question here. How bad is it to use AI to write blog content? I'm the only marketing employee, so I can't write 30 blogs a month. Yeah, this is a really good question and something that we're seeing a lot. We definitely always recommend and favor quality over quantity. But at the same time, you can use AI in your process to assist with the writing. The recommendation that we give is use AI to get to a, polished draft and then spend the amount of time, have it do research, have it go and search the web for additional information that it can pull in. Make sure you're putting your own spin on it and putting that together. And then you can, spend your time just going and reviewing and editing it like you were working with like a freelance contractor who was submitting a first draft, but you're still going to review everything on your end. So, if you're only hitting 5 a month, do it so you can scale up to maybe 10 and then see if you can scale from there a little bit further. We also have a new update to this audit tool coming out probably next week that's going to go way more granular. It's awesome to see that people found this really helpful already, but we want to make it a little bit more actionable and become more of a dashboard. And so it's something that you can come back to. This just gives you a snapshot of the searches that we do today, but you can actually log your data, come back and get a custom 90-day plan that will help you walk through this, step by step. So keep an eye out from there. And yeah, really excited. One other thing that you guys might find helpful is if you come down to this last page, it's a little bit buried, but you can actually download a memory pack in Markdown or PDF. And what you can do is download that, and it has all of this data stored, and you can drop that into your LLM of choice and use that to start making some suggestions or using it as you try to improve this, of how you can kind of continue to improve over time. So let's talk about the specific pages that we want to focus on and how we can actually make it quotable. And so again, this is something that we're seeing across the board, is how do we make, non-commoditized content? If if everyone has access to AI and can mass produce content, how do you actually differentiate? And so what our goal here is, make it so the page has information that is only something that we could write or say on our own. And so the main thing is cite sources, statistics, and direct quotes on the page. We've seen this kind of jump citations pretty dramatically. And, think about it in a strategic way as well, right? There are subject matter experts within your business that you can use to pull in an interview. Use as an opportunity to talk to your customers. Use as an opportunity to go talk to potential buyers. All of these are great conversations that you can have and record, and use those transcripts to enrich the content on your website. And so you're no longer producing content that everyone else can. Another key component is actually front loading the page. Back to the idea that LLMs are quite lazy. They rarely actually read your entire web page. This is why Markdown has become such an effective file format, is because it uses the standard kind of H1, H2, H3 structure. And after the H1, there's usually an introduction paragraph or some kind of overview paragraph. It's usually only reading that. And so we want to front load the information and the meat of it in that main kind of section. Also, write in plain language a buyer would use. So if you want to write at the level that your buyer is at, because it, if you were writing more technical or more advanced than where your buyer is, the LLM actually has to translate that, right? Because it's going to have to ingest that information, think about it a little bit, and then respond to the person who's searching these queries. And so it's actually really important to try to cut that additional step and just write the answer, write your article the way that you want LLMs to respond to your customers. Schema markup is, not huge. It's more about these three things that you can skip. Like, schema is very important, but it's actually more the fact that your site is structured and has proper headings. The next thing is keyword stuffing. This is a very dead strategy that is kind of left over from the SEO era. We have seen that the cleaner the page, again, the more the language is closer to what your buyer is expecting, we're seeing a higher performance. And then, uh, you know, only chasing ranking number one on Google. This will definitely help you on Google, but it no longer helps you with AI. We've included some prompts here, and I'll copy and paste these into the chat, that you can be using to, kind of gut check some of these things. You can check your different pages. You can, run this in addition to the audit tool if you have questions about specific pages, to understand what's the claim that we're making? How are we being original? The second prompt helps you, get the meat of the information to be front loaded, and then draft a third party pitch, right? So when you're reaching out to some of these third party websites that are mentioning you, you want to make sure that you're showing up accurately. Again, back to LLMs have to know how to think about you holistically. And so that's not only how you're talking about you on your own website and your own social channels, but you want to make sure that language is consistent on third party mentions as well. This is because we know half the answers come from pages you don't even own. So third party pages are what, where most of these answers are coming from, best of and comparison lists, then, where other people who are credible in your industry are making short lists, the best 10 CRM softwares of 2026, those types of things. And then the next thing we want to look at is community. So where Reddit and community threads are happening. Claude is loving these right now because it's really the voice of the customer and the voice of the buyer. And then kind of more traditional channels like Wikipedia and even YouTube are more favored by platforms like ChatGPT and Gemini. Again, ChatGPT, Google, there's a strong overlap there. Just to show how this works, again, all of our research, all of our data is from almost 200 companies that we've helped with this now. Rise is one that we, reference often. But they're a really great kind of example of how you can go from not really ranking at all to having it be a really strong lead gen source to getting millions of dollars in pipeline in just a year to continuously grow almost 1,000% month over month on new sessions coming from AI. And then also being able to think globally. So, one of the objectives that we had to work on with them was how do we show up in different countries? And so, as a global payroll provider, really building out a strategy which consisted of everything that we've walked through today to help them show up in over 100 countries. So if you don't do anything else and you want to get started with showing up on AI search, I would first go into AI and ask, search the queries that your buyers are actually looking for. Again, the best of X for Y industry, so the best CRM, for B2B SaaS in 2026 is a really easy one to start with. If you don't want to go and think through all of those, again, that's what we do automatically in this AEO audit tool. We run 50 to 100 new queries in across every different LLM, and then understand, where you're ranking and where you can improve. Then really start thinking about your positioning. So, what's the one claim in your company can make backed by a real number? What data do you have access to that no one else does? And don't write this off. Definitely spend some time because a lot of companies are sitting on data that they don't even understand is quite valuable. Move that claim to the first paragraph, or make sure that the answer of the page that you're creating is moved up to that first paragraph. Make sure you add sources, statistics, and direct quotes from subject matter experts, whether internal or external, and then go and reach out to those best of lists and see if you can get featured in them and get that outside mention. Thank you guys again. You can take your scorecard. If you do run it and have some questions, you can always reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. I do respond to every DM that I get. And so feel free to shoot me a message. Feel free to connect and just say, hey, and I'm happy to answer anything about your report. And if you are, if you still have questions, please let me know. If not, thank you guys for joining today. We run 2 of these workshops every week. One is about doing live builds and, really showing you how you can level up your AI skills specifically with Claude and Claude Code. And the next one is best practice. The ones we do on Thursday are about AEO and showing up in AI search specifically, where we do these live teardowns and walk through best practices so you guys can build your own AI system completely. Thank you. It's nice to see some familiar faces. And I hope for the new people, I see you guys again next week. Thank you. Have a good rest of your week.